All right, today you're going to complete lesson 3.1. So in Google Classroom, you want to go ahead and click the number 1 for today, which will take you to today's Nearpod. You should pause the video while you do that if you don't already have it open. So here we have two samples that we observed in lesson 1. There is a slight typo. It was not actually sample 1, it was sample 3. So the sample 3 and 2 were both these white crystally powders that many of you felt were the same substance. So they look very similar, but do you think they share all of the same properties? Why or why not? So when answering this question, you really want to think about the article that we read and how they talked about how atoms are arranged and how that determines the properties of something. So go ahead and take a look at the two diagrams. And on your next slide, sorry, let me switch this. On your next slide, you're going to answer the question. Sample 1 and 2 look very similar, but do you think they share all the same properties? Why or why not? So here's the diagram. You should go ahead and pause the video and answer that question. So we observed that these substances have similar properties. They were white, they were crystally, they were made up of grains, but we cannot see the atoms that make up the substances. We're not able to see that small. The diagram there shows that the substances are made up of different types of atoms. So here for what they're calling sample 1 is a K and a Cl. According to the key, we have a potassium and a chlorine. And then for sample 2, we have an Na, which is sodium, and a Cl again, which is chlorine. The diagrams showing the atoms that make up the samples are a type of model. A model is an object, diagram, or computer program that allows us to understand something by making it simpler or easier to see. Scientists often want to learn about things that are too small to see. For example, we have worked with models to learn about small things such as proteins and molecules. In 6th grade, you dealt with proteins with Mrs. Chunko in the beginning of the year. And this year, just in the last chapter, we did look at molecules, which are too small to see. And we used the sim or the digital model to help us see those tiny particles as well. So we can't really see atoms because they're too small, but atomic scale models like the ones in this image can show the atoms that make up a substance. So here we have what they're calling sample 1 is made up of a potassium atom and a chlorine atom. And here it's a repeating group of atoms. So it's not just one potassium and one chloride that's here. There's lots of those pairs over and over and over. And same thing with the sodium chloride. So we have a sodium chloride molecule, and those are repeating over and over and over again to get the pile of salt. Models are important tools for scientists. This key concept helps us to understand why models are important. Things that are too small or too large to see can be studied with models. In this unit, we're going to be using the chemical reaction simulation, which is a scientific model that shows the atoms present and how those atoms are grouped together in different substances. The sim will help us learn more about the atoms that make up various substances. It will allow us to make observations that would be impossible under ordinary circumstances. Although the sim is different from real life, it is accurate in many ways. Today, when we use the sim, we're going to use the chemical stockroom mode. And to get that, you're going to click the 3 pancakes that will be here to give us our menu. And then you choose the top one, which is the chemical stock mode. To compare substances, you're going to choose them from the list that has been given to you. And you can compare up to 3 substances at a time. Should you change your mind and want to get rid of a substance, you can do that by pressing the X in the upper right-hand corner. Notice that each substance window shows information about the group of atoms that repeat. This is very important. So remember, water is not made up of just two hydrogen and an oxygen. Water is made up of this repeating atom group. So H2O over and over and over and over millions of times to get a glass of water. So here we have the single atom group. And down here, it's showing that repeating group of atoms. Each substance window also shows the substance's atomic arrangement and some of its characteristic properties. So it does show how that atom repeats itself, and then it gives us some properties on the macro scale as well. So things that we would observe about the substance. Again, you can select up to 3, and that allows you to compare their atoms and their properties. So you can take a look at the atoms, how they are arranged, you can look at the individual groups, and you can look at the properties on the macro scale and compare the substances. We know that different substances have different properties. To understand why, we're going to use the sim to investigate different samples at 2 scales, the macro scale and the atomic scale. Again, the macro scale are these characteristics that are listed, and the atomic scale is what we see as far as these models go that scientists have created for us. These are atomic scale models of the 3 different samples. You will observe these models in order to make a claim about whether they represent the same or different substances. Then you will use the sim to gather more evidence. So you have sample 1, which is a carbon with 2 oxygen attached. Sample 2, which is a carbon and an oxygen attached. And then sample 3, which is that carbon and oxygen, but then it's repeated. You should go ahead and go to Google Classroom and open up number 2 for today. You should be seeing the document that's on my screen. If you're not there yet, please pause the video until you get there. All right, so the directions on the Nearpod tab said to compare the atomic scale models and choose a claim, then use the sim to gather evidence about these claims. Part 1, considering the claims. Compare the atomic scale models of the 3 samples shown below. Notice how these models are similar and how they are different. Choose the claim about the samples you think fits best. Then you will gather evidence from the chemical reaction sim. So we have sample 1 again, a carbon with 2 oxygen attached. We have sample 2, which is a carbon and an oxygen. And sample 3, which is that carbon and oxygen, but repeated. Based on the atomic scale models of the samples, which of the following claims do you think is best? You're going to want to highlight the one that you believe to be true. You simply select the text, choose the highlighter, and pick your color. Okay? So claim 1 says that all 3 samples have the same properties. So by looking at the atomic models here, would you think that all 3 would have the same properties? Therefore, they are the same substance. Claim 2, 2 of the samples have the same properties. Therefore, they are the same substance. However, one sample has a different set of properties. Therefore, this sample is a different substance. So claim 2 is saying that 2 of these samples are the same, 1 is different. Claim 3, all 3 samples have different properties. Therefore, they are different substances. So you should go ahead and pause the video, think about those 3 claims. Remember what you read in the article as far as how the arrangement of atoms affects the properties. Remember what we talked about as far as repeating patterns of molecular arrangement. Okay, and pause the video, pick your claim. Okay, so you should have chosen either claim 1, 2, or 3, and you're now going to move on to part 2. So in part 2, you're going to use the chemical reaction simulation to gather evidence about the claims. So you should go ahead and click the link here to open up the sim. Pause the video if your sim is not open yet. So we want to go back to our document. Number 1, open the sim, which we did, and select the chemical stockroom from the menu on the left. To do that, you click the 3 bars, and you want chemical stockroom. Step 2, select the substances represented by the models, sample 1, 2, and 3. So we got sample 1, 2, and 3. So the first one I need to find is oxygen, carbon, oxygen. So I'm going to look in my list for carbon, oxygen, carbon. There it is. Okay, so that's the first one. So you want to go ahead and look for sample 2 and look for sample 3. Once you have all 3 of them up, or whatever you can find, you're going to observe their properties and answer the questions. If you're having trouble, please feel free to use this link here to watch the YouTube video of a teacher showing you how to use the sim. In the beginning, it says not to use the video. If you have access, you are welcome to use the video if you are confused on what you should be doing in terms of working in the sim. If you have any questions further than that, please feel free to email me, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. That is, once you finish, you should turn that in, and then that is the end of lesson 3.1. I hope everybody has a wonderful break. Make sure if you have any missing assignments that you get those done over break, and I look forward to seeing everybody the following week. Have a great day.